Part 54. Getting urgently the penicillin for my lover's infection cure. Bai Xuelan entered the ward, thinking about waiting for Huaifeng to wake up before letting him drink. Taking the soup bowl out of the basket, and wrapping it with a towel to avoid getting cold. Just after wrapping the soup bowl, there was a low voice from the bed. Who was making a noise outside? It turned out that Xuan Huaifeng had already woken up and was looking in Bai Xuelan's direction with his eyes open. Bai Xuelan smiled and said, "Did you wake you up? Those guards are all rude. Is it good to drink soup? Zhang Mama's cooking should be to your taste." Xuan Huaifeng asked, "Where's Zhang Mama?" Bai Xuelan said, "She sent soup for you. But I'll let her go back first, so she doesn't have to stay overnight." Xuan Huaifeng said, "It's true, she's old, and I can't bear the hard work all night." Bai Xuelan came over, stuffed a pillow under his shoulder, and said thoughtfully, "You just had surgery. I dare not move you. Lie down like this first, and I'll feed you a drink." Xuan Huaifeng knew that he was injured. "Although I'm sorry, but it's not easy to be brave," so he smiled and said, "Then it's going to be hard work. I seem to have some blessings after receiving this shot. And the chief should come to feed me soup." Bai Xuelan smiled and said, "What are you talking about? You only need to say one sentence on weekdays, 'I promise to feed it,' or anything else. And I will be happy to do it for you." Xuan Huaifeng knows his temper very well, and if he continues to say this, he doesn't know what embarrassment he will cause. If so, smile without saying a word. Bai Xuelan asked casually, "I heard that your third brother is now with a military commander named Xuan." Xuan Huaifeng woke up and fell asleep after being injured. His sense of touch was not as sharp as usual, and he didn't want to go elsewhere, so he casually said, "Yes. Yes. This man used to be my father's bodyguard in the past." Bai Xuelan asked, "Do you know him?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "I don't know him either, I've met him once or twice. Today I met my third brother at the Jiangnan restaurant, he happened to be there." Bai Xuelan asked, "What did you say?" Xuan Huaifeng finally noticed something and asked, "I'm already lying on the hospital bed. Do I still need to be interrogated by you?" Bai Xuelan smiled and said, "Where? Isn't this idle? Just ask what you did today. Besides, the surname Xuan is a military commander anyway. Maybe he will deal with our general administration of customs in the future. Let's take a look and be prepared. What fun things did you talk about?" Xuan Huaifeng said honestly, "No opportunity. I didn't say a few words to him." Bai Xuelan couldn't help but rejoice after hearing this, and even more conscientiously fed Xuan Huaifeng soup. Bai Xuelan was very particular about the steps when feeding the soup. Holding the soup bowl in one hand and the small silver spoon in the other, he tried the heat against his lips first, and then brought the spoon to Xuan Huaifeng's mouth. To put down the small silver spoon, gently wipe the corner of Xuan Huaifeng's mouth with a clean towel. The movements are more authentic than those of the specially trained nurses. Xuan Huaifeng couldn't help laughing and said, "There's no need to be so troublesome. You have to test the temperature every time. I'm not a child. Don't I know if it's hot or not?" Bai Xuelan said, "No trouble, I like it this way." Xuan Huaifeng asked, "What do you mean by that?" Bai Xuelan smiled charmingly. "I rub it on my lips and then feed it into your mouth, you see. Every back and forth like this is not like we kissed a little kiss?" Xuan Huaifeng was very embarrassed, not knowing how to answer this, blushed and drank the soup silently. Only took a few sips before saying, "I won't drink it anymore." Bai Xuelan was very gentle and asked him, "Are you angry?" "Then I'll apologize." Xuan Huaifeng said, "No. I'm full and I can't drink it." Bai Xuelan looked at it and saw that he had already drank half a bowl, so he didn't force him anymore, and said, "Go to sleep when you're full, and have a good rest." However, after drinking this soup, do you want to take it easy? If you want to take it easy, you can't move around. I'll help you get the urinal. Bai Xuelan said. Even more. Xuan Huaifeng was so embarrassed that even the base of my ears turned red. I shook my head and said, I don't need it. Bai Xuelan looked amused and said, it's inevitable that people who are hurt will be like this, so there's no need to be shy. If it's not convenient for you, I can also pass the urinal with one hand and support you with the other. Xuan Huaifeng frowned and shouted, you're talking nonsense. Are you trying to irritate the patient? Bai Xuelan was afraid that he would get excited and affect the wound, and hurriedly coaxed, Okay, I won't talk nonsense. Just here to accompany you, if you really want to piss off. Don't be shy, you must call me. Xuan Huaifeng said in surprise, are you going to accompany me at night? How did you do it? You have a lot of business to do tomorrow. I'll just ask anyone to accompany me here. Bai Xuelan said, it's me who accompanies the night. He waved his hand to show that he had made a decision and would not change it. Xuan Huaifeng knew that he couldn't talk about it, so he simply accepted and said, then you can get a small bed and rest next to it, don't sit all the time. It's too hard. He closed his eyes and fell asleep again. As expected, Bai Xuelan asked someone to bring a small folding bed in, and lay on it with his clothes on. Although he closed his eyes, he was listening to Xuan Huaifeng's movements. However, Xuan Huaifeng slept well, and his breathing was gentle and long. Bai Xuelan spent a lot of energy in dealing with Zhou Huo during the day. And when Huaifeng was injured, he observed it in the middle of the night, and his eyelids gradually became heavier, and he didn't know what to do. Soon fell asleep. This sleep even slept until midnight. Bai Xuelan opened his eyes and took a look, quickly got up from the small folding bed, smiled and walked to the bed. I failed the night stay and slept to death. Do you want something to eat or drink? Startled, Xuan Huaifeng's eyes were tightly closed, and his cheeks were flushed abnormally, as if he had applied 2 balls of rouge. Bai Xuelan hurriedly stretched out his hand, and when he probed his skin, his hand shrank suddenly. His forehead, face, and neck were all burning like fire. Bai Xuelan hurriedly shouted, Huaifeng! Huaifeng! How do you feel? Pushing hard on Xuan Huaifeng's shoulder twice, Xuan Huaifeng's 2 lips were tightly pressed together without making a sound. Bai Xuelan panicked, rushed out to open the door and called, Doctor! Call the doctor! Something's wrong with the patient. The guards outside hurriedly looked for doctors and nurses. Like Raph, he pulled 7 or 8 men in white coats and pushed them all into the ward. It just so happened that the German doctor who operated on Xuan Huaifeng was recognized by Bai Xuelan. The German doctor touched Xuan Huaifeng's forehead, held the receiver on his chest and listened for a while, then raised his head, sighed, and shrugged towards Bai Xuelan. This helpless shrug is a typical way for foreigners to express regret. Bai Xuelan was so anxious that he almost wanted to pinch the foreign devil's neck and shouted, Speak. You speak Chinese. With a bird face, who knows what the hell you're doing? The German doctor spoke in unfluent Chinese, I'm sorry, now, we have to listen to God's arrangement. Bai Xuelan said angrily. What God's arrangement? What nonsense are you talking about? I ask you what happened to him. The German doctor said, infection. What? What infection? Infection after a gunshot wound. The German doctor made a dangerous gesture to strengthen his tone. Many soldiers are injured and infected, and you can only, it's you China. What people say, it's up to fate. However, this is usually very dangerous and will get the worst results. Bai Xuelan's heart trembled, and he gritted his teeth. Fuck your mother's bad results. His results are bad, your results are bad. It's definitely not going to get better. I don't believe it. Isn't there a cure for this disease? Are you not a German hospital? The German doctor thought for a moment, turned his head, and muttered to a certain white coat who was being pushed around him. He spoke in a foreign language before saying, "There is a medicine that should be able to cure it." Bai Xuelan hurriedly asked, "What medicine?" The German doctor said, "This medicine is more valuable than gold." Before he could finish his sentence, Bai Xuelan had the urge to strangle the bastard to death. "It turns out that you are afraid that my surname Pai can't pay the bill. How much does this medicine cost, you say? As long as you cure him immediately, I will pay you 10 times the price." The German doctor folded his hands and swung his arms greatly and said, "No, no, it's not about money. This drug, penicillin, is only available to the military. And it is strictly controlled. Our hospital, now, does not have this drug. This penicillin is a very new drug, and Bai Xuelan originally wouldn't know. Just happened to be shot in the hand a while ago, so I know something about it." Bai Xuelan listened and didn't say anything to the German doctor. He turned around and went straight out of the ward. Adjutant Sun was at the other end of the corridor to discuss with Song Ren how to assign the guards today. Seeing Bai Xuelan coming out and looking around, he seemed to be looking for someone, so he hurried over and asked, "Chief, who are you looking for?" Bai Xuelan said, "Just looking for you. Last time I was shot, what did you and the doctor say about how many penicillins should I get? I was confused and didn't listen carefully. Where is that thing now?" Deputy Sun said, "That's the Prime Minister's order for us to go to the headquarters. The leader said that it is to prepare for you in case of infection. This thing. The officers who fought in the war called it the magic medicine, but unfortunately it is too expensive. I heard that even if a foreign soldier is injured, it is also used in a slightly lower official position. I'm sorry. This time, I don't know how much effort it took to order 1,000 PCs from a foreign country and hand them over to the headquarters. It looks like a baby has eyeballs. No matter if you are the King of Heaven, you need the Prime Minister to take 1%. I have to approve the note in person, and I have to register it clearly. The 4 I gave you last time were useless, and the headquarters chased after them and said that they would be returned to the library, and I returned them later." Bai Xuelan frowned and said, "If you knew there was today, you shouldn't have paid it back. You should go to the headquarters immediately and ask for 10 penicillin. And say that I need it urgently." Adjutant Sun looked embarrassed. "If it's anything else, it's said that the chief needs it urgently. Ask them if they want it, and they will definitely give it. But for this dish of penicillin, I'm afraid it still needs the Prime Minister's approval." Bai Xuelan said, "Where can I find him to get an approval note now? I can't afford to delay here. Bring a pen and paper." Adjutant Sun brought a pen and a piece of government official paper. Bai Xuelan took the pen and wrote a few lines, shook the batch of slips, and said, "This word is almost the same as the Prime Minister's handwriting." Adjutant Sun smiled bitterly. "It looks very similar, but..." Bai Xuelan was very anxious, but his mind was still spinning very fast. Seeing the hesitation of Adjutant Sun, he knew it and said, "Yes, the Prime Minister will investigate this matter in the future. You can't explain it. Then let Song Ren hold the approval note and he go." Song Ren was transferred from Chief Pai in Shandong, and even if Prime Minister Pai got angry again, he couldn't deal too much with the people sent by his parents. "Is a very suitable candidate," Bai Xuelan called out, "Song Ren." Song Ren trotted over with the steps of a soldier, stopped and saluted, and said, "Chief." Bai Xuelan instructed him, "You take my car, take this batch of papers to the headquarters, and ask for 10 penicillins. If people's lives are at stake, give me a quick solution. If anyone dares to talk nonsense, you can do it yourself." Song Ren took the batch of papers, he shouted loudly and responded, "Yes." He turned around and left. Bai Xuelan was still not at ease. So he caught up and added a warning. This thing is very important, you must hold it yourself. Song Ren said, don't worry, Chief, if it breaks a little bit. I will unscrew the brain and give it to you to urinate kettle. You, bring it to me. Calling the names of 2 people, they went without any delay. After Bai Xuelan finished this matter, he hurriedly returned to the ward. Xuan Huaifeng was burning badly. The nurse kept changing the cool towel on his forehead. His cheeks were still red with heat, and fire was burning under his skin like a layer of jade. Bai Xuelan called out, Huaifeng? There was no movement in Xuan Huaifeng, and it was as if he had completely lost consciousness. Bai Xuelan was secretly afraid. Originally, he knew that he needed penicillin, which could be obtained, and he was a little sure, but now that he looked at it like this, he was not so sure. And his heart trembled faintly. Bai Xuelan called out a few more times, but Xuan Huaifeng still closed his eyes drowsily. Instead, the nurse next to him said, Sir, the patient is like this. Even if there is thunder in his ear, he won't open his eyes. How can he hear you? Startled, he lowered his head and didn't dare to speak anymore. Only then did he turn his eyes back again. Holding Xuan Huaifeng's hand hanging by the bedside and placing it in his palm. The long fingertips were placed in the palm of his hand, becoming more and more thin like onion. But it was extremely cold. He had no other choice but to wait minute by minute for Song Ren to fetch penicillin. While waiting, Adjutant's son suddenly came in and reported to him, Chief, Mrs. Nian is here, let her come in and take a look? Bai Xuelan blurted out, no. Adjutant's son heard his deep voice and knew he was upset, so he responded, and just as he was about to go out, Bai Xuelan seemed to remember something behind him. And suddenly changed his mind and said, wait. Adjutant's son stopped. Bai Xuelan stood up, took 2 quick steps beside the bed, then turned around and said to Adjutant's son, tell the people outside to stop for me, and ask Mrs. Nian to come in. Adjutant's son really went out to invite, but they were not the same. Yes. Xuan Dian was escorted in by Zhang Ma tremblingly. Zhang Ma was dissatisfied with Bai Xuelan for the sake of sending soup to Xuan Huaifeng yesterday. But she couldn't even see Xuan Huaifeng's side. Xuan Dian vaguely understood that the bully wanted to put her own brother under house arrest like a prisoner. Therefore, as soon as she entered the door, her face was very ugly. Seeing Bai Xuelan standing in the room, she didn't even say hello as if she hadn't seen this person. She went straight to the bedside. Looked down, her face changed suddenly, and she exclaimed in surprise, ah! Why is his face so red? She reached out her hand and touched it, as if she had touched hot coals. And felt even more flustered, and hurriedly shouted, Huaifeng, can you hear my sister? Huaifeng, what's going on? The German doctor in the room had already arrived. He went outside. Only 2 nurses remained in the room. A nurse said, the patient has a high fever. Xuan Dian said anxiously, who doesn't know that he has a high fever? Where is the doctor? The wound is infected. Xuan Dian took a deep breath, her face suddenly as white as paper. At the beginning, I heard my father casually say that infection will kill people. Many people in his army died because of this traumatic infection. Once, a division commander died, and he was also shot in the body. It wasn't in any important place. The wound that should not have died, but the wound that was bandaged, became infected for some reason, oozing pus, and rotted into the bone and death. Although Zhang Ma didn't understand what infection was, she was even more frightened and asked cautiously, isn't this a foreigner hospital? There must be some way for foreigners? Xuan Dian could hardly stand up and sat down beside the bed. Adjutant's son came over to comfort him and said, Mrs. Nian, don't worry. Adjutant Xuan is young, so he can probably get through it. The doctor said that if the fever subsides tomorrow, there may be a chance. Before he could finish his sentence, Xuan Dayan's tears flowed down 2 lines, and she said sadly, "Oh my God, my God. I absolutely don't believe that this is the case. Could it be that there is no advanced method even in German hospitals now?" Adjutant Sun said, "It's not that there are no advanced methods. There is a new drug called penicillin, which is very effective. If there is this, it will not be difficult." Xuan Dayan grabbed a life-saving straw and hurriedly said, "That's really good, please bring it quickly. No matter how much money I'm willing to pay." Adjutant Sun said, "The world is not peaceful now, and there are wars everywhere. There is no place to buy medicine if you have money. Even those British and German troops have almost broken their heads, let alone here. I only heard that the Prime Minister has been working hard on diplomacy recently and had a hard deal with the US government before buying it." After hearing the words of the Prime Minister, Xuan Dayan couldn't help but drift in the direction of Bai Xuelan. Her voice was a little lower, and she said, "Then what do you mean? I can only ask the Prime Minister?" Adjutant Sun sighed and said, "Mrs. Nian, I didn't throw cold water on you. Even if you ask for it, you probably won't be able to ask for it." Xuan Dayan felt a little humiliated, and endured a sullen breath, and whispered, "I know, in the Prime Minister in front of me. An ordinary woman like me can't speak. Then, probably I can only beg Chief Pai to ask for this kindness for me? For Huaifeng's life, even if I were to kneel and beg him, I would still be willing." Bai Xuelan turned her back to them, folded his hands, and stood by the window looking at the street scene below, as if he had never heard of it. Adjutant Sun said, "No, no. You have wronged our chief. Adjutant Xuan looks like this. How can he not be in a hurry? He went over to beg in person early in the morning. You see, our chief and Prime Minister Pai have always had a very close relationship. He was in harmony. He personally went to ask for it, and was voted back by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister said that those medicines are only a little. They are all prepared for the commanders, generals and commanders who were injured during the war. And they are only used to make the country bigger. On the person who gave it. Other people, regardless of distance or closeness, will not give it. It makes our chief angry enough." Xuan Dayan only thought that Bai Xuelan was planning to blackmail, but when he heard Adjutant Sun say this, it didn't seem like it, on the contrary. It was as if she really couldn't get the life-saving medicine. She panicked even more and said, "What? Even Chief Pai went in person. And the Prime Minister didn't give it?" Zhang Mama was also trembling all over. Thinking about it, even a high-ranking official like Chief Pai can't get it. It's really hard to get to the sky. Immediately there were tears, wiping away the tears and crying, "My little master, what can I do? What can I do?" As a result, Xuan Dayan was also provoked to cry. Bai Xuelan seemed to have made up his mind. He turned around and said in a deep voice, "Don't cry. What's the use of crying now? I don't believe it. The General Administration of Customs is not as big as those commanders. He's handsome? Huaifeng is a gun to prevent poisonous calamities. Isn't he doing a national service? Why doesn't he give drugs?" Xuan Dayan was extremely dissatisfied with what he had done in the past 2 days. But at this time, what he said hit the heart of Xuan Dayan. It was even hotter than what Bai Xuelan said. She said, yes, what you said is really reasonable." Adjutant Sun said hesitantly. "But the meaning of the Prime Minister. No matter whether the Prime Minister is or not, anyway. People from the General Administration of Customs can't give their lives in vain." Xuan Dayan walked in front of him and said clearly, "Mrs. Nian, you can just wait with peace of mind. I'll go again now and earnestly beg the Prime Minister. If he still refuses to give it, I, the head of the customs, will be inappropriate. Look at me. His prime minister's office was demolished on the spot. Xuan Huaifeng said in shock, how did this happen? Isn't he your cousin? Bai Xuelan said coldly, he can be close or distant. And I can only be close to me. At this moment, Bai Xuelan's image of justice, the brilliance in the hearts of the two women is so high, there is no words to describe. Zhang Mama was moved. And she cried even more and couldn't speak, and only said intermittently, Chief Pai, our young master will all ask you, I will burn high incense for you every day in the future. And ask the Bodhisattva to bless you. Duke Wandai. Xuan Huaifeng also choked and said, your lord doesn't care about the villain, for the sake of the wind, such. After breaking it, she didn't know how to pick it up. After a while, she quietly said, Chief Pai, you are a good person, please take care of yourself. Yesterday, Bai Xuelan waved his hand decisively, stopped her, and said proudly, Mrs. Xuan Huaifeng is my subordinate, he is in the general administration of customs for a day, I always want to keep him safe all day, this is my share. You probably thought that I was going to use this to blackmail you, then, you underestimate me, Bai Xuelan. After speaking, Xuan Huaifeng's face flushed and she was ashamed. Bai Xuelan asked the two of them to sit down for a while, and led Adjutant Sun out of the door. It seemed that he was going to take a car to the Prime Minister's office immediately. But in fact he went to the first floor and waited impatiently at the gate, frequently looking out into the distance. After a long time, I saw the car with the customs flag stuck in front of it hurried back. Opening the door, Song Ren got out of the car with a box in both hands. Bai Xuelan rushed forward and received it firmly with both hands. Before he could say anything, he immediately went upstairs with a solemn face. Now that the life-saving medicine has arrived, the atmosphere in the corridor is particularly tense. The German doctor has been on standby for a long time. He led 2 nurses and an intern to the ward, making Xuan Huaifeng jump from the bed. She got up and stared at the crowd as they came in like an enemy, daring to make a sound for a while. Later, seeing Bai Xuelan behind the German doctor, holding a box carefully in both hands, Xuan Huaifeng knew that the medicine had been obtained, and asked in surprise and joy, yeah. Are you really coming? There was no expression either. He just gave her a nod and didn't look at her again. On this side, the doctors and nurses were busy, opening the boxes, prescribing medicines, getting distilled water, and getting the needles. Xuan Huaifeng and Zhang Mama didn't stand either, or did they sit? They were worried about Xuan Huaifeng's condition, and at the same time, they were afraid that they would hinder the rescue. Adjutant Sun took the opportunity to invite them out of the ward. In the corridor, Adjutant Sun said in a low voice, Mrs. Xuan, this time Adjutant Xuan is really lucky. You don't know. Our chief has almost made a big accident to get to this pan of penicillin, and we don't know what the consequences will be in the future. Bai Xuelan getting penicillin is actually a forgery of the Prime Minister's approval, and speaking out is also a felony. So, what Adjutant Sun said was not entirely a lie. Xuan Huaifeng just saw Bai Xuelan come in, followed by a few guards with blue faces with guns behind them, looking very serious. Hearing what Adjutant Sun said, she believed it even more. And she was grateful and worried, and said in an uneasy tone, has Chief Pai annoyed the Prime Minister? What can I do about it? The Prime Minister is the Prime Minister after all. If you want to beat him, you will be punished, so we can only stand next to you. Adjutant Sun sighed and shook his head, and suddenly said, however, Mrs. Xuan, I ask you one thing in private. And I hope you can grant it. Xuan Huaifeng said, please tell me, as long as I can. Adjutant Sun said, for a while, please rest assured and let Adjutant Xuan rest in peace. Come to visit, the condition has improved, and I will call your house to report in person. What do you think? Xuan Huaifeng asked. Why is this? Adjutant's son looked around and suppressed his voice before saying, someone has been there recently. In front of Premier Pai, when he mentioned some of the actions of Director Nian. He was very slanderous, and it seemed that it also involved financial ethics. Unexpectedly, the Director Nian went to intercede today. And Prime Minister Pai suddenly remembered this and asked the adjutant Xuan if he was. What does it have to do with the Director Nian? Chief Pai naturally tried his best to protect the adjutant Xuan, saying that although they were relatives, they did not have much contact, so he finally went to the Prime Minister to be suspicious. However, in my opinion, at such a terrible time, Adjutant Xuan is injured again, so it's better not to have a close relationship with the Nian family for the time being. It's better not to have any contact with you. Let's all have a clean life. When the matter is over, the chief will naturally deal with you slowly. Xuan Huaifeng was really taken aback. Since Nian Liangfu became the director, he has more than 10 times his money. She knows it. And she also thinks that his money is like flowing water, which is very strange. Now it looks like it's not right. If even the Prime Minister heard the wind, wouldn't it be serious? Looking at it this way, it was really short-sighted to offend Bai Xuelan like this yesterday, and it was very inappropriate. Now not only does the younger brother's life need to be rescued with great effort, but even his unsatisfactory husband may also count on him to take care of him. Thinking of this, Xuan Huaifeng was a little bit timid, then he listened very well, nodded and said, what you said, of course, is very reasonable. Zhang Ma couldn't help but whispered, I don't understand. Then why can't we come and see the young master? Xuan Huaifeng glared at her and said, I don't even dare to understand the affairs of the officialdom, so what are you talking about? She shut up.